Hello and welcome back to Silver Age Silver Screen, podcast where we watch, discuss, and review sci-fi, cult, superhero, and other stereotypically geeky films. I am your co-host, Casey Jarms.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
And Riley, I'm so torn. On one hand, I could make a sex joke because this is episode 69.
Of course.
On the other hand, I could make a bunch of Amongus jokes because this movie inspired the video game Among Us.
Why don't we do both? When your homie is sus for 69ing you?
Oh, and then he eats Wilford Brimley!
Yep.
That guy has a fun name.
Wilford. This week we are reviewing the iconic John Carpenter film from 1982, The Thing. Considered by many to be one of the most iconic, greatest horror movies of all time. It went on to inspire the video game Among Us, along with the other film that we've reviewed previously, Alien.
Also Metroid Fusion, which is an actual horror game. The Among Us thing is mostly a joke, because that's a party game. But
Yeah.
Metroid Fusion is fucking creepy.
I mean, this movie is iconic. It's spawned a sequel. It inspired many video games and other filmmakers. People have trying to recapture the magic that this film had. I think in terms of isolated thrillers set in one location, I think this and Alien are like really the top tier here. Some places have gotten close, but in terms of claustrophobic isolation and just pure terror that can come from that scenario, this and Alien are among the best, if not the top two best.
A lot of people would say that this is one of, if not the greatest sci-fi horror movies ever made. Everyone, except for people in the 80s. This film was despised when it came out. Just look at any review. They hated this because it's nihilistic and gory and violent and people keep dying. I saw reviews that were like, why can't this be wholesome like E.T.? Because it's trying to be a paranoid horror film about the inability to trust others.
It is interesting to look back at John Carpenter's career, John Carpenter is a phenomenal director. Have we reviewed one of his movies before?
I do not believe so. He's done a lot of horror stuff. He did Halloween, Christine. This is, I would argue, the best thing he ever did, and it took 20 years for anyone else to agree with that. Yeah,
I mean, it is funny to look back at John Carpenter's filmography, particularly in the 80s. He had a lot, and I mean a lot, of just really dark, depressing movies like They Live, The Fog, Escape from New York, and The Thing. He has so many movies that came out in that decade that were just so super depressing, and then out of nowhere he makes Big Trouble in Little China, which is like the most balls-to-the-wall fun action movie you can ever watch.
Honestly, I love Big Trouble in Little China, but it is so weird. He makes this with Kurt Russell, and it's just such a nihilistic, brutal film with a dark ending. And then he makes Big Trouble in Little China with Kurt Russell, and it's an amazing movie for the complete opposite reasons. And like this movie, it was not appreciated in its time.
No, John Carpenter is cinema history's most underrated directors, particularly for his time, and I'm glad that people are nowadays realizing and appreciating his work for what it is, particularly those two films, which I think are both spectacular. Yeah. This film stars Kurt Russell as R.J. McCready, Keith David as Childs, and as mentioned before, Wilford Brimley.
Like 10 other dudes with various names. That is a thing that I normally complain about, and it is kind of a problem where poor films have big casts and you can't keep them straight. I've seen this a few times before. I didn't have a problem. Did you?
I, for the longest time, didn't know who anyone was. I just wrote down, all right, Kurt Russell did this, Keith David did that. But then again, at the same time, it's also like, with a movie like this that has like a big cast, you know they're all gonna die. You know the movie Prometheus that alien prequel that had no aliens in them, or no xenomorphs in them, rather. I think they said at the very beginning of the movie, the crew of the Prometheus was 30 plus people. And right there, you know, like, they're all gonna fucking die. You don't need to know their names.
God, 30 people? That reminds me of Lost, how there's like 70 survivors of the crash, like 50 of whom are unnamed, and eventually the Rouse just got sick of them, so like some people show up and just kill them all with flaming arrows.
Yeah, exactly. The story is basically, there's this base in the middle of Antarctica doing research on whatever it is they're doing. I'm pretty sure they said. I didn't write it down.
I don't know. Like, one's a geologist, one's a meteorologist, two are biologists. Yeah. They're just doing Antarctic shit.
Yeah,
they have a cook. Do they have cooks at Antarctica? That feels like a waste of a position.
Well, I mean, they gotta eat.
But, he wears roller skates.
Yeah, so the story follows this crew that do research at a base in Antarctica, very beginning of winter. And then, out of nowhere, they start to become attacked by a monster that can imitate and can assimilate anything and morph its body into a perfect replica of whoever it is they've assimilated. And the crew is of, what, a dozen people?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it's like, it took me like over half the movie to learn, like, oh, that's McCready, that's Childs, that's the Doc. You know, whatever. It took me a while to learn, but by that point, half the crew's already dead. So you're like, okay, they didn't matter in the first place. Yeah. That's my long-winded story of trying to get around.
You know, this film, another reason besides the darkness and the brutality of it, which wasn't what people wanted in that era, but was more appreciated in the 90s and 2000s. Another reason this movie was disliked is because this movie was an unfaithful remake.
Oh, yes.
This is the second adaptation of the John Campbell story, Who Goes There? The other one came out in the 50s. It was a horror classic at the time. This was compared to it kind of unfairly. At this point in time, that one's kind of been forgotten because this one is so good.
Yeah.
There was also a prequel to this, also called The Thing in 2011. I haven't seen it. It got mixed reviews.
I believe it's called The Thing from Another World.
Right.
Or something. It's like...
Right.
It's basically a very similar story, only it's more of like a campy, cheesy 50s sci-fi movie. You know, that just came out a dime a dozen. People forget about it, but... It was in 82 that Carpenter and his team and the studio decided to reboot it as just a modernized 80s horror movie. And as you said, there was a lot of people who were like, okay, well, why isn't it the exact same thing? Because that's what we want to see. Newsflash, people, if you want to see the reboot as the exact same thing, just watch the fucking original. Maybe that's a better choice of action instead of wasting your money on something that's the exact same thing, but most likely not as good.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the 50s version, but that one wasn't even really an adaptation of the book, I don't think. Like,
yeah, no.
I'm pretty sure they made the Thing into, like, just a big lumbering Frankenstein monster because of special effects limits. And just looking at the cast page, they did not even have the same characters and stuff. And I know this has the same characters as the book, and I haven't read the book, but I do know a fun trivia fact is the really suspicious people in the book who get killed because they turned out to be things were made innocent in this one, and some of the innocent ones were made things to mess with people who read the book.
Yeah, I have seen bits and pieces of the original movie, and it is precisely that. It's just a big, lumbering monster walking down dark hallways. That, or a creature that assimilates and looks exactly like this guy, and then when they're trying to defibrillate him and revive him, a giant mouth opens up in his torso and bites off the doctor's hands. One is definitely more frightening to watch than the other, I will say. In addition to that, I'm a firm believer in the idea that when you're adapting something to film, different mediums of storytelling require the stories to be told in different ways. Like, that's why video game movies, arguably most of them have been shit. Almost all of them have been shit, with the exception of a couple that are okay at best. Because telling a story in a video game is very, very, very different than telling a story in a 2-hour movie. So when you're adapting something, it's challenging in the sense that you have to be faithful to the book, or you should be faithful to the book because you're fucking adapting the book, but also you need to change some things in order to make that story cinematic, is what I'm trying to say. And at the end of the day, we're just reviewing it as the movie. And if the movie had to change some things to make the final product is really fucking good.
Yeah.
So that's all that matters.
One more thing on the reception of this movie. This won a Razzie, but not for worst film. It won a Razzie for worst score, and I don't even get that. The score is great. It's some terrifying shit from Ennio Morricone, who is one of the greatest composers in filmmaking. Like, he did a lot of westerns, most notably The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He's amazing. He did great on this. And he, got a Razzie for it. I don't understand.
I'm not going to go too far into award shows, but I feel like award shows often just get caught up in whatever hype there is. Like, oh, people hate that movie? Let's just randomly give them Razzies or Oscars. Like, oh, people really liked it. Let's just award them. Whatever. That's I'm not going to get too far into tangent.
So, going into this movie, we begin in Antarctica right before winter is about to begin. Actually, Antarctic winter, it is pitch black 24/7 pretty much, and it isn't in this movie, just pointing that out there. But winter's about to begin, the snow is growing worse, and our team of scientists are in the base. We're introduced to Kurt Russell's character, MacReady, playing chess against the computer, and when he loses, he pours his booze in the computer, destroying it. And it sets up who he is as a character, and that's foreshadowing for how this movie ends. But also, dude, that was a public computer. Sorry, Dr. Copper, I know you like playing chess, but I destroyed the only chess computer because I'm a drunken moron.
Wasn't that his personal cot, though?
Oh, right. Yeah, he does have his own room.
Yeah, the film opens up with really cool wide shots of the Antarctic landscape, which, is just basically fucking snow and ice. But Siberian Husky runs alone through the tundra, being chased down by a Norwegian helicopter that's actively shooting at him. It's a pretty slow opening, but it does an incredible job at setting up the mystery of what the fuck is happening. Why are they shooting at a dog? Why is a dog running through Antarctica by itself, being gunned down by Norwegian scientists?
And those dickhole dog-hating Norwegians who hate dogs because they're mean, there's no other reason, they chase the dog to the American base, and while firing at the dog, they accidentally shoot one of the American scientists, so the Americans shoot them back, killing them. Actually, they kill one of them. The other one blows himself up with a grenade. Oops.
That was pretty stupid. Like, you could see him, the actor just kind of went whoop, threw the grenade behind him a little bit. It was a quick thing, but he's like, oh shit. Whatever. But yeah, this dumbass blows himself up. And doesn't he blow up the helicopter too?
Yeah. Those are limited. It's fucking Antarctica. Do you know how hard it is to ship a helicopter to this continent?
Anyway, they bring the dog into their base after killing and having been assaulted by these Norwegian researchers. They bring the dog in, and slowly but surely, we just get a little more acquainted with the crew, the situation they're in. Communications are completely cut off. The Doc and MacReady decide to go down to the Norwegian base before the storm hits, just to see what the hell's going on. The Norwegian base is just a couple miles away. Just one thing, right out the gate, this might be a little strange. That dog was fucking amazing.
Oh my god, yes. I actually was so impressed. I looked it up. His name was Jed. He was also in the movie The Great North. That is a good dog actor because he does not act like a dog.
No.
He's sitting in the base and he is just calm, motionless, staring. Something's wrong with that dog.
Yeah, exactly. There's a shot in particular, this one long take. I'm pretty sure it's while MacReady and Doc, they go to the Norwegian base, and it's that one take where the dog walks down the hallway, and he slowly, he's not wagging his tail, not panting, he's just dead set walking, and every doorway he passes, he looks into the room, and then keeps going, looks into every room, and then goes into that last room, and you see that silhouette there, and then it cuts to black, like, oh shit, what's going on in there now?
Yeah.
It's like, that shot in particular, the dog at no point acted like a dog in that entire, 30-second clip. Whoever trained that animal, and the fucking dog too, Jed, you said his name was? Damn, I know it was weird. That really stuck out to me. I was like, and even later on, when it's in the pen, and it's just kind of sitting there, motionless, I was just, damn, that dog did a good job.
Like the dog is just wandering around, and they're like, hey, put that dog in the kennel, Caleb, who's our dog handler, and he does, and the other dogs, because they're dogs and they know shit, they fucking go wild. They're all barking and like trying to get away from this dog as it just lies there quietly.
All we know at this point is that Norwegian scientists were trying to kill this dog. This dog is acting very suspicious, and it walks into a room with someone. That's all we know.
Yeah. So McCready and Blair, the cruise biologist, they go to the Norwegian base and find it destroyed. Half of it is burned down. The rest is all frozen over. And we see the aftermath of a horror movie. Like, just, we don't know what happened, but it was horrible. There's an axe stuck in a wall. There's a man chained to a chair with his wrist slit, and they've turned into icicles, like the blood.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of burnt corpses. There's a coffin made of ice that's been opened. And most interestingly of all, there is this corpse with 2 heads, charred and frozen, that they're like, let's bring it back with us. This is cool.
They discover this dead body, which is like these 2 people like mid-melding together. And they just bring it back to the base because they're scientists, and why the fuck else are they gonna do? They're like, what the hell is this? They discover that the crew might have been uncovering some fossils or some extinct species or whatever. I think at one point they threw out the theory like, oh, maybe something was frozen in ice and attacked them. They're like, nah, that's fucking stupid. Also, at the beginning of this movie, we saw a spaceship crash land on Earth.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that.
I forgot about that because the movie doesn't really need that shot.
No. And I do have a problem with that shot. I think that, for the most part, this film is very dark. And I think that, at least just the design of the ship itself, it just felt very 50s sci-fi.
I mean, it's a saucer. It's a flying saucer.
Yeah, and I guess at the end, that could be them tributing the 50s movie, but it just felt out of place. A little too campy for this. And it's barely in it, so it's not that big of a deal, but, you know.
Yeah. So later that night, after McCready and Blair have gotten back to the American base, the dog kills the other dogs, and we get introduced to our first of the things. I didn't write down, I should have looked it up, who did the special effects for this movie, because they are, you're looking.
Rob Bottin. And you want to know what's great? What I love about that? Rob Bottin, I believe, if I'm mispronouncing his name, I apologize. His name is in the opening credits. That's when you know this movie's going to be good. Whenever there's a movie with practical effects, and the practical effects supervisor and designer is credited in the opening credits, that to me signifies like, okay, this is gonna be a good movie.
What's the famous Hitchcock quote where like the composer for Psycho deserves like half of the profit because it was that important? That's the level of importance the special effects team was for this movie.
Yes.
Like our introduction to Dog Thing, its face splits open.
Like the fucking Demogorgon.
Yeah, I realized as I rewatched this, oh, that's what inspired this. It splits open, and then this bloody dog skull comes out, and then these tentacles rip out and start dragging in the other dogs and consuming them. And the crew sees this and freak the fuck out. They don't know what to do. They get a flamethrower and just have to torch it to death because what else the fuck are you gonna do?
Yeah, I love the shot, 2 shots in this. One, when the dog's skull like splits into 3 like almost like leaves, you know how flower petals do that, and then the bloody skull just falls to the ground because it's like, don't need that anymore. And then a giant like tentacle tongue comes out of that. It's so good. I also love the shot of all, because obviously all the dogs are freaking out. I love the shot of that dog trying to bite the wires off of the fence, keeping them in the kennel. Because it's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Honestly, the best part of that scene is as the dog is eating the other dogs and like shape-shifting, you see in its like mass of meat, I guess is the only word, of fucking alien flesh, you see a human eye appear. Like among it. Whatever the fuck this thing is, I don't even know what to say, but that is a good clue that this thing is so much more terrifying.
Yes.
But it's weak to fire. They toast that shit. And they go over the files they got from the Norwegian base and discover what this thing is. The Norwegians found an alien in the ice. It has the ability to shapeshift. It has the ability to infect people and turn them into copies of itself, like make them also evil aliens. And if it gets off of Antarctica, it could destroy the world in 24 hours, according to this strangely advanced computer simulation Blair has.
I mean, what else are you gonna bring to Antarctica with you?
Yeah.
A fucking computer that plays chess?
Well, bad news.
Anyway, so they perform an autopsy on the first body they find, the morphed face. Also, that autopsy scene, pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty gross, but
again, this is such good special effects. That looks like a real corpse, albeit one that has two faces.
The face felt a little fake, but then again, what am I expecting from the frozen corpse of the thing? You know, but they eventually discover the assimilation, imitation, absorption nature of this thing. They think, oh yeah, we killed it. It killed all our dogs. We still had like 2 dogs left.
Yeah, they had like 2 left, but they put them down, and it's sad, but also probably for the best.
Yeah, they were like, we killed it, no big deal. But then eventually the paranoia sets in, and they come to realize, oh shit, it can assimilate and look like anyone.
It was walking around the base for hours.
Yeah.
It bit a dude. Like, wait, who did it bite? Because I remembered, hey, that's weird. That dude didn't turn into a thing.
Wasn't it the bald guy?
Yeah.
No, he turned into a thing.
Well, yes, but he didn't turn into a thing from that. Like,
right, true.
Yeah, it's weird.
So people start to suspect each other, and that is honestly where the best horror comes from in this movie.
Yeah.
Is this idea of you have no idea who to trust. There's parts where it leaves it very, very open to the possibility that even Kurt Russell, essentially the protagonist, this movie is him. What else? Keith David, Childs, who, by the way, Keith David looks really different young. Like, I don't know what I was expecting. I was just like, damn, that dude looks young here.
He looks good in this movie. And also, he's great in it because he's Keith David, and he's great in everything.
Yeah, how is that dude not in more things?
I don't know. He has one of my favorite voices. Like, it's just such a good, deep voice. He's great in Rick and Morty and Community.
And Spawn.
Yeah.
The doc begins to be or was it Doc?
There are a few doctors there. Blair, Wilford Brimley, starts going paranoid and, crazy. Oh, shit, we're all screwed. It's going to destroy everything. Yeah. And also, they decide to lock the corpses in the storeroom. At which point, the split-face corpse comes back to life and attacks Bennings, one of the biologists, and, starts choking him out. And they rush into the room and they destroy Splitface with a flamethrower, but the window's broken. And they go out and they see Bennings just crawling through the snow. And actually, I think that might be my favorite alien design in this movie. Bennings as a thing. He's beginning to transform. And it's not much different. His hands have turned into claws. And he has these empty, black, beady eyes. And he's just standing there.
Yeah.
He looks almost human, which is the terror of the things. Any of them could be a thing, just one that had 5 more minutes of transformation. And they torch Bennings, and then, okay, we need to figure out which of us is the thing now, because 1 or 2 of us might be a thing now, but by spring, if we don't flesh this out, all of us will be.
2 things. I love the shot at the beginning of that, right before it attacks and transforms Bennings. I love Kurt Russell getting kicked out of the storage room. One of the other researchers approaches him and asks him, hey, we need to talk outside, despite the fact that it's 40 below, in order to tell him that one of the crewmates might very well be one of these things.
Yeah. One of the main red herring suspects in this is Caleb, I guess his job is just managing the dogs, because they don't say any other
His name's Clark.
Or fuck, why did I say Caleb?
I don't know, but it doesn't
I know,
matter.
Clark. Jeez, I said that earlier too. He's acting really scared and nervous all the time, and he spent the most time with the dog, so, might be a thing. Let's keep an eye on him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love the line where the guy first asks McCready to
I believe
go
it's
outside.
Fuchs is his name.
Fuchs asks
Yeah,
McCready,
smart guy McCready friend.
Yeah, Fuchs asks McCready to go outside with him to have a private conversation, and McCready just says, "What do you want? I just want to go back to my cot and get drunk." I mean, first off, a man after mine own heart.
Fun fact, in a deleted scene for this movie, McCready was carrying around a blow-up doll.
I'm sure.
It's probably good for tonal reasons that they cut that, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, McCready wasn't in action here at the start of this movie. He's just good in stressful situations, and outside of that, he's just kind of the weirdo loner who hangs out and flies helicopters.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a helicopter pilot. That's his whole purpose in this. He's not a researcher. He's not, like, a scientist. He's not a doctor. He's just flies a helicopter. So what else is he going to do? Fuck blow-up dolls and drink Jameson. Which, they have a lot of alcohol in Antarctica. Then again, you're in Antarctica. I would bring as much alcohol as possible to Antarctica with you.
They also have like 5 different guns and 3 flamethrowers.
Yeah.
Which they don't in real life at Antarctica because cabin fever go Jack Nicholson on everyone. Like, where are they gonna shoot? Seals, I guess? But
I don't know.
would pistols even work? Like, seals are big. I don't know.
I don't know, fucking penguins.
Yeah, fuck penguins. Something I would like to note about this movie is a slow burn, like a lot of great horror movies, but it doesn't have the problem of like 2/3 of it just being setup. Mm-hmm. Like, by the time of, like, Benning's gang mauled, or it was either that or the dog thing. Point is, once they see, okay, the things are here, this is how they work, let's be smart and stop them. Once the horror has started, it's only like half an hour in.
Yeah.
This is a slow burn that gets to the point quickly and keeps burning and keeps being a really good slow burn.
Yeah, that really is a testament to the quality of writing, editing, and directing. I also love that line he has when I'm pretty sure they bury Giles, or they burn Giles again, and McCready basically looking out onto the entire crew is like, alright, listen up. I know that at least a couple of you are not these things. Because if all of you were, then you would have attacked me by now, but you're not, which means some of us are human. But some of us could be. That monologue he gave, I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah. So the crew starts reacting to the thing.
One of the doctors sabotages the helicopter.
Yeah, he just smashes the radio and the helicopter, all of it to shreds. Like, Blair is his name, Wilford Brimley. And they're like, okay, either he's a thing, or he's just gone crazy because he's terrified he's gonna die. Regardless, let's just tie him up in Mac's cabin and forget about him for the rest of the movie.
Yep, I love that part. Like, he grabs a fold-up chair and uses it as a shield. Like, I'm like, that's one way to do it with a guy maniac. A maniac with a gun and an axe. That's one way to get to it.
Yeah, they just charge him carrying a couch and slam him to the ground.
Yeah, but they tie him up. They are effectively completely cut off from the outside world until spring in 6 months.
Yeah. The doctor, his name is Copper, he comes up with an idea. Ooh, this thing's blood, it reacts to human blood as it, like, absorbs it. If we mix human blood, which we have extra, like, stored here in case of emergencies, with this thing's blood, then we can figure out which of us are things. Let's go check and all of the blood is gone! All the bags have been cut open! Hey, this was locked, and Gary, our commander, was the one with the key, so I guess Gary's suspicious now.
Yeah. I also do find it funny that, like, the blood in those bags is, like, freshly pouring. So I love how their, like, commander was like, oh, yeah, I mean, someone might have taken my keys off me last night. Like, and I, as the viewer, am sitting there like, dude, the blood is, like, freshly pouring out. Someone got to it recently.
Yeah, and I would like to note, who spilled the blood is never explained. A lot in this movie is just left up to the audience's imagination. We're as in dark as the cast. Although, if you watch closely, you can notice a few keys. Like, everyone's like, oh, Gary must have spilled the blood because he had the key to it. Except he didn't. He gave his keys to Bennings and Windows when they were going to the storeroom, and you can see Windows drop them in fright when Bennings gets attacked. Mm-hmm. So anyone could have taken the keys. And Gary is not a thing.
After a couple standoffs with guns, MacReady is elected as leader, and the Doctor and Clark are imprisoned. They tie them up and imprison them because they're the ones that are most likely the things.
Yeah. Partway through, like, all the suspicion, the power goes out. And when it comes back on again, MacReady and Knowles, the cook, they go outside and find Fuchs, MacReady's friend, burned alive in the snow. And that's never explained. Their assumption is that the thing attacked him and he set himself on fire to avoid being assimilated, which is awesome. But anyway, as they're out there, they see a light off in a building that no one's supposed to be in. And they walk towards it, and as they're going, Niles finds MacReady's torn jacket, which means, oh god, he tore out of his clothes when a thing assimilated him. So they just lock MacReady outside and leave him for dead. And then MacReady breaks in a window and gets some dynamite and holds it to his flamethrower hey, I'm in charge now. If you disagree with me, we all die. Yeah. Fuck you. You left me outside. It's Antarctica. It's very chilly.
Basically, it was discovered earlier that whenever the thing assimilates someone, all their clothes get completely ripped up. They find MacReady's ripped up clothes outside. Now, two things. That speaks to the intelligence that this creature does have. Whatever it is, wherever it came from, this thing is highly intelligent. It knows how to turn the crew against each other. Having crashed down to Earth, 100,000 years ago, it knows just how to manipulate these humans into mistrusting each other and creating chaos so that it could win. And my second thing is, Kurt Russell has amazing facial hair in this movie.
Oh yeah, he looks great.
He just had hair in general. I mean, he has neck beard. I wouldn't like that, but with minus the neck beard he has, dude, his flowing locks and his beard.
He is 80s Kurt Russell, just being 80s Kurt Russell. So, during the stress of MacReady threatening to blow them all up, one of the scientists, his name is Norris, has a heart attack, and they rush him to the medical room along with Copper, the doc. And as Copper is doing CPR on him with a defibrillator, Norris's chest splits open into a giant pair of dogs and bites off Copper's arms.
One of the drawbacks that I had viewing this movie is because this movie has gained such a high level of appreciation and notoriety, all the scenes with the thing transforming I've seen before. So I saw it coming. I saw this coming. But that does not mean that the practical effects and the acting, the gore, blood, horror, that does not mean that it's not effective.
Yeah.
I saw it coming, but god damn, I saw every single horror scene except for the blood test jump scare. That's the only one I didn't see coming. That actually took me off guard. But what happened immediately after I saw it coming?
Yeah.
But everything I saw coming, but it was still horrifying to watch.
Minor little how this was shot, with the arms getting chopped off by these massive teeth.
Yeah.
They cast a double amputee and just put fake arms on him and then rip them off with the puppet. And that worked. And then out of this jaw, comes a giant spider monster thing that they kill with a flamethrower, which, god, that's what they need to assimilate. Something immune to fire. Then they'd be unstoppable.
Yeah, I know, right? And then while all that's happening, while they're setting fire to the body, the head splits apart. I saw this, I'm pretty sure it was by Corridor. You know them? They react to good and bad CGI. They also do that with practical effects. They had one part, and it was that part. It was this part with the thing, the head splitting off, and the neck, and you just see the tendon, the bright neon green tendons ripping out, and you see pus just bubbling out. God damn, that I think is my favorite special effect.
The thing looks amazing.
Yeah. And the head just kind of slumps over like a Salvador Dali painting, falls to the ground, grows spider legs and giant antennae, and starts trying to crawl away. But then they look at it god damn it, and they torch it. Yeah, as it's hissing and screaming at them.
Yeah, one of them, Palmer, genuinely says, "You've gotta be shitting me."
Yeah.
This ends up inspiring Mac on how to tell who's a thing without the blood. Because as he figures out, every part of the thing is alive. Like, if you cut off its arm, it's still alive, and it will react to you like stabbing it.
Yeah.
So he takes blood samples from everyone in the crew, using the same knife which they don't sanitize, which means that, oops, you just infected everyone, Mac.
Very true. He rubs it on his jeans.
That wouldn't...
Oh, yeah.
They say a single cell. But yeah,
joking.
They cut off blood and then they touch it with a hot wire to see if it reacts. And they go through person by person. And Gary is like, oh god, this is ridiculous. And right as he's saying that, they test Palmer's blood and it reacts. The blood like shoots out, like forming a face and screaming.
That's the part that I mentioned earlier that took me off guard. That part with the blood reacting. I had no idea how that was going to go down.
And then Palmer just starts shaking, like Kubrick staring at Mac as everyone tied up next to him is like struggling to get away.
Yeah.
And Palmer breaks out of his bonds, like knocks the couch over. And he charges at Windows, another one of the scientists. You can understand them more when you can see their faces, and it's not just me randomly saying a name.
Yeah.
He, grabs Windows, and Palmer's head splits open and chomps down on Windows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that shot of his face just melting, being ripped apart as it's like... And then it forms like a giant mouth that bites him.
Honestly, it kind of reminds me of the mask from Scream.
Yeah.
That's how deformed his face gets.
So yeah, they torch that thing, and then they torch Windows, that poor man, because they're like, he's gonna turn.
Yeah.
They just light him on fire. Oh yeah, he also shot Clark in the face, because Clark rushed him. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, and they do the blood test on everyone, and Clark was an innocent man. He wasn't attacking MacReady because he was a thing. He was attacking MacReady because he was scared of MacReady.
Yeah.
And that is the terror of paranoia. It leads you to hurt each other.
Yeah.
But fortunately, everyone in the base is clean now that we killed Palmer. Mac's good, Knowles is good, Chow's is good, Gary's good. Oh fuck, Blair! We forgot about Blair. We just left him alone for a few days. Oh, I hope he's not a thing. Or even if he isn't the thing, could have just broke in and talked to him. Actually, no, that's untrue. They did talk to Blair once, and it's such a great scene. Like, Mac talks to him and is like, hey, Blair, are you good? And Blair's like, oh, yes, I'm completely over that, breakdown. I'm fine. I'm not going to destroy everything. And as he's saying this, you can just see the noose hanging next to him.
Yeah. So, yeah, they go to the tool shed where they've kept Blair, and Blair is missing. What they do find instead is a bunch of loose floorboards that somehow, at some point, Blair managed to dig a giant tunnel, presumably maybe 15 feet below, where there's another giant room, and Blair has been building himself a transport machine that looks like a mini version of that flying saucer that we saw earlier. So, also, it's like, how the fuck are you gonna get that out of the...
They'll just dig another hole! He's good at it. That's the thing's true powerful. It's a digger.
Yeah.
Anyway, they go back to the base. By the way, they left Childs there to guard and told him, hey, if Blair approaches, torch him. Yeah, Childs is just gone. Don't know where Keith David is. Also, base is wrecked. The heater's destroyed, so they're all gonna freeze to death. Mm-hmm. And then MacReady decides to solve it how he solves chess, by going into the basement and blowing up the base. Because the thing, it wants to just freeze everything because it can survive being frozen.
Mm-hmm.
But it can't survive a giant explosion.
Nope, not at all. They go down to the basement where the generator is just missing. So they just set up a bunch of dynamite everywhere. Everyone goes all their separate ways. And then out of nowhere, Blair assimilates Gary. Then the thing attacks Kurt Russell. And right before Kurt Russell blows up the thing, it hisses and screams at him, and he just goes, yeah, fuck you too.
Chucks dynamite at it, blows up. By the way, last thing in the movie is the Blair thing, which also absorbed Gary and presumably Niles. We don't actually see what happens to Niles. He hears something, wanders off, and then is never seen again. He got eaten, probably, but we don't know. Ambiguity is this movie's strength. Yeah. But anyway, this thing made from Blair and Gary and Niles is just this massive monster. Half of its face is Blair's face. The other is this massive pair of jaws going out of the side of the face, like out of the ear. And it has a dog head coming out of the stomach that like crawls out and starts moving towards Mac. And there are actually cut extra scenes of this that they just removed because, oh no, those shots don't work. The more you focus on this, the more clear it is that this is a fake thing and a puppet.
Yeah, I will say that last shot of the thing, I think that's my least favorite design of the thing in the entire movie.
Yeah.
It just felt so artificial, and also just the design wasn't as interesting. It just kind of stood there like in a Superman pose with its head off to the side, like, nah. Yeah. I'm like, I said, I prefer the giant defibrillator design scene. That design is my favorite. This final one, probably my least favorite.
It could be worse. We never see the thing's true form, but it's described in the book as just this green alien with 3 blue eyes. Yeah, showing Riley an image of it. It doesn't look good. Like, the show Atop the Fourth Wall has a puppet of it on its set, and it looks cheesy. Oh, but also, this thing, it, like, just goes through the ground. Like, I don't even know what to describe it. Like, tearing up floorboards as it charges at Kurt Russell before he blows it up.
Yeah, it's like that Scorpion Transformer in the first Transformers movie where just sand will blow up one by one and stuff, but he does that with snow and floorboards. Yeah. That's the best I can describe.
So, the base blows up, but Mac has survived somehow. Conveniently, because it gives us a better ending that way. He crawls out of the ruins of the base, he's gonna freeze to death. He sits by a fire just waiting to die. And then Childs shows up. And him and Mac just sit there and they drink together as they freeze to death. Neither one knowing if the other is a thing. Both certain to die unless one of them's already dead. It's such a bleak, depressing ending. And it works perfectly for what this film is, this story about the horrors of paranoia and uncertainty.
Right. Do you think that one of them was a thing in the end?
If I were to bet on it, I would bet on Childs being a thing. Although there are a lot of theories into this, and I would just like to say all of those theories are based on poor evidence. Like, the most famous one, it's the dumbest one, is the, like, Molotov cocktail theory. Like, ooh, what if Mac poured gasoline in the whiskey off-screen, and then when he hands it to Childs, Childs tastes it and doesn't say, hey, this is a Molotov cocktail, which means Childs is the thing. No, you can't base your theory on things that happened off-screen that you weren't told. Also, that doesn't even make sense, because it has Childs' memory. It would know what whiskey tastes like.
Yeah.
Another theory is that, you can't see Childs' breath during the scene, which means that he's the thing. No, you actually can see his breath. It's just not as clear as Max because he's closer to the fire. Also, the things have lungs. We see that in the autopsy. And finally, in the scene where they're all tied up, the blood test, you can see the lights in the eyes of everyone except Palmer, because Palmer is the thing. And that's something the cinematographer has actually mentioned. It's what they did in Blade Runner, actually. And people are like, well, you can't see Childs' light in his eyes during the final scene, except you can. Also, that rule wasn't applied throughout the film. The point is, we don't know. It is written for us not to be able to know. Maybe John Carpenter did know and told Kurt Russell and Keith David during that scene, but we don't know what that is. And there have been various sequels in other mediums, like comics. There was a canceled sequel. There's a video game. And all of them have different answers.
Of course they do.
So, I don't know.
I guess it really doesn't matter, because it feeds into the idea of paranoia. Even with these two guys most certainly gonna die, you have no idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
It is very intelligently done, I will say. It's not like a twist ending for the sake of having a twist ending, or an ambiguous ending for the sake of it. It's like, it's actually well done ending.
I love this film, and I love its ending. This movie, it's just terrifying. The special effects are possibly the best practical effects I've ever seen. Definitely the best horror practical effect. Well, there's a few contenders. It's like top 5 ever horror practical effects. It's simply astounding. Yes. But more than that, this is such an intelligently written and acted movie. It makes you feel like the characters. You don't know who to trust. You can't even trust Kurt Russell, everyone's favorite actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that guy. He played Santa Claus twice. I will say, I love this movie. This was actually my first time seeing it. It is one of the best movies we've watched on this show. It is not my favorite horror movie that we've reviewed on this show. I still think, for me personally, that title will still go to Alien.
Yeah. Conversely, I like this slightly more than Alien.
Okay.
But they're both amazing, and
yeah.
Who really gives a shit which is better? They're good movies.
Yeah. As I said at the top of this episode, Alien and The Thing, and you know what? Let's throw The Shining in there too. Top horror. Like, in terms of horror movies, those 3 are the best. Top of the best.
You know, I say I'm not a horror fan. Is it just that a lot of horror is shitty?
Yeah.
Because some of the highest rated movies I've given on this movie have been horror.
Yeah, well, horror is both very easy and both very, very, very hard. That's why I love it so much.
Yeah.
And there's so many different avenues and ways you can go about it. It's a very diverse genre. But the reason why, I think for me, the reason that brings it down a little bit is the fact that when it comes to Alien in particular, and I don't want to compare it too much to Alien, the movie effectively sets up the characters, their dynamics, who they are, like why you should care about them, and their friendships with each other. Whereas with this one, don't get me wrong, Keith David and Kurt Russell are fucking badasses. At one point, McCready tells Childs, he's like, you better shut up before I kill you. And Childs, dead ass serious, goes, then fucking kill me. Like, don't get me wrong, these guys are badasses, and you do root for them because you empathize with the situation they're in, the paranoia that they're experiencing, the level of uncertainty, because you as the viewer are also paranoid, and that's one of the greatest strengths a movie can do. It engages you, the audience, and makes you feel what the characters are feeling. And that makes for incredible horror. You do feel for them, added to the fact that they're humans going up against a homicidal alien that kills dogs. But
most evil thing it does.
Yeah. So you do care about them, but it's just, I don't think this film does as good of a job at fleshing out the dynamics between the characters and why you should necessarily care for them as people. I mean, you do care for them in the sense that you empathize with their plight, with their conflict, but who they are as characters and people and their relationships and friendships with each other, I'm not saying that they had to be, I'm just saying you care about them, but for me, I didn't really care for them as characters and as friends necessarily. It still gets the point across very, very well. It's just, I think for me, I don't care about them as characters as much as I would have liked to. You know, because like it just feels, the character dynamics feel very cold to me.
Yeah.
That said, it's a minor convenience. The film still gets its point across, and it does it very, very well. And that's for me the big reason why it just goes down a notch.
Yeah. Honestly, that's kind of the problem with us having reviewed Alien, because now everything has to stand up to Alien level of quality.
Yeah, but I mean, don't get me wrong. As I said, The Thing, The Shining, and Alien. Top 10 horror movies of all time, maybe even top 5. In addition to that, I also find it interesting that all 3 of those are isolated, paranoia-filled thrillers, you know?
Yeah, that's what makes good horror. The Predator, notably, was not in that top 3.
That was more of an action movie.
Now, The Predator, I like the Predator, well, I don't like it that much, but The Predator, I don't know, let's not shit on The Predator, it's good enough.
Yeah. So I do find it interesting, like the parallels between the 3 horror movies, which, yeah, as you said, you're not a big fan of horror, but they're like most likely going to be the 3 highest rated movies in our show. They all have a lot of very similar elements to them. They all have a singular monster, whether in the literal or metaphorical sense. They're all in an isolated location. 2 of them are in the snow. 2 of them are about aliens. I'm sure Stephen King trying to loop The Shining into Aliens somehow. That's a lie. I know that's
Has he
just
ever
a
done
joke.
Aliens? He has to have.
Oh, he's done Aliens a lot.
Yeah.
But,
Honestly,
yeah.
screw Alien versus Predator. I want Alien versus The Thing.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, no, I don't. The Thing wins.
Mm-hmm. What about Alien and Predator versus The Thing?
Honestly, Predator will probably stand a better chance. Do Predators have flamethrowers? They probably have flamethrowers.
They do.
Yeah.
Most definitely. But so that was our review of The Thing. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this a 9. It is outstanding. I loved it. As I said at one point, I've seen every single scene with The Thing in it because people just play him over and over again because this movie's incredible. That said, I still had a phenomenal and horrifying time watching this movie. It's great. One of John Carpenter's best, and that's saying something because he has Halloween, Big Trouble in Little China. He has an incredible filmography, and this is definitely up there with one of the best horror movies ever. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
God, it's my favorite horror movie. It's amazing. I love that paranoia, that uncertainty, that intelligence of like trying to figure out what's going on that it puts the audience in. It's an amazing movie. 9.5 out of 10.
Yep. Great movie. I'm really glad I saw it finally.
Yeah. And it's a perfect movie for the nice, chill winter season. Do you know that in Antarctica they watch this and The Shining right before winter starts and they aren't allowed to leave?
Yeah, I bet.
Which is a bad sign, but
Yeah, I bet.
I hope no one gets ideas.
Yeah.
Although it's fun in a dark humor kind of way.
Yeah.
Plus, they're great movies.
Yeah, of course. I mean, where the fuck else do you get? I mean, then again, I don't know. If I were to go to Antarctica, movies and booze, that'd pretty much be my be my deal.
Do you think Norwegians watched the 2011 thing before they get locked in?
Oh, most definitely. From my, albeit limited understanding of the 2011 thing, it's about the Norwegian crew, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about them discovering the thing and figuring out what happened to them. They had incredible practical effects, and then at the last minute they're like, no, let's CGI all of it. And it's not that great CGI, mostly because it was rushed at the last minute and wasn't given the proper time, budget, or talent to do it.
Oops.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in it. She's good, but I don't know. This is one of the many films that just does not need to be remade.
Yeah.
Ever. Like this, Big Trouble in Little China came up. There are just certain movies just do not touch. No. Don't reboot anything.
No. So anyway, next week we're going to be revisiting an old friend of ours. Again, thought we were done with him, but there's another Zack Snyder DC movie that we haven't talked about. And actually, this is his best one, and we'll probably say nicer things about it.
Which movie is that again? I forget.
Watchmen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're watching Watchmen? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, we'll be back next week, assuming we don't get murdered by such a good boy. Who's a good boy, Jen? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Oh, you bit me, and now I'm a thing.
Hopefully that won't happen. You can find more of this show on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, also basically all social media platforms at Silver Age, Silver Screen. You can check out all my short films on YouTube. You can check out all my extra content on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitch, all at Riley James Thorpe. And you can check me out all on there. Please follow me. Casey, how about you?
Well, you can all find me on Twitter at JarmesCasey, JarmesCasey. Also, be sure to check out Hell of a Game. It's a D&D podcast I host. Also, I post all my writing on caseyjarms.wordpress.com, and the reason I'm plugging that is because if you go through and look for a story called It Came From Below the Waves, it has nothing to do with this movie. I am not bringing it up because it's a knockoff of The Thing. It's a good story. Read it.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, as always, I'm Casey Jarms.
And I'm Riley Thorpe.
And hey, It's just a movie. Don't lose your head about it. Especially not to the effects of gravity pulling on you as you're being burned alive. Although, I mean, if you do lose your head in that circumstance, it can become a spider thing and run away, and that's cool, I guess.
Yeah.
But then that will give away your weakness and lead to the destruction of you as an individual. I don't know why I'm talking about this. Also, this movie, there's a really good short story written based off it. Not my one, the one that's called The Thing. Check it out. It won a Hugo Award. Goodbye.